Gary Wybenga can't science. Simple as that. Roll the intro. Gary Wybenga does not understand the first thing about how science works. Not even a little bit. He doesn't understand physics, doesn't understand math, doesn't understand, well, I'm not really sure what he does understand, but science ain't in it. He put out a video a while back about how he made this board with nails, rubber bands, to illustrate his claim of the Rayleigh criterion angular compression is the reason stuff disappears from the bottom up on a flat earth, therefore there is no curve. And he put rubber bands from an observer's eye that's supposed to be even with the first floor, to the first and second floor, to the upper floor, fifth and sixth floor. He did all this stuff and said, see, that's how it works. I have just demonstrated it for you. Therefore, QED, the earth is flat. No, that's not how that works. And if he understood science, he would have known that. BlueMarbleScience did for him what he should have done before he put that video on. I'll link his BlueMarbleScience's video in the description, and here's the clip I want you to see.
Now we're going to show you how the angles from the top change differently. The ones at the bottom keep getting smaller and smaller as they go away at the vertex. The vertex, vertex, vertex.
Gary's vertex identification skills are flawless. Well done, Gary.
Okay, now we still have our observer in the same place from the same starting position. To the top here, he's got a narrow angle compared to what the bottom had a big wide angle to these two. And it starts off narrow. Now you have an angle to the surface here too, to the side of the building. It's very narrow.
That's because Cletus is only standing 10 feet away from the damn thing, Gary.
Right here. But that is called foreshortening, because the closer the angle to a surface, the more foreshortened the information will be in that area. Now, as the observer stays at the same elevation, moves further away, you notice the vertex at this angle increases a little bit. It actually gets wider. Why? Because this angle now gets wider. Here was the first one. Here's the second one. It's much wider. So you increased the distance, and this became wider here.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
So with increased distance, you changed your angle of view and made it wider. I call that reverse foreshortening. Now you get to the third one. You're further away yet. It's even wider than here. This one is wider than this one. This one is wider than this one at the vertex. This one is narrow, or this one is narrow right here. This one is wider, and the last one is even wider. So as you move away, the bottom or the top stories actually increase in size. They don't decrease because you've reversed the foreshortening effect. So your vertex down here at the bottoms, at the distance, became wider, whereas the ones on the bottom kept getting narrower. So the ones at the bottom are diminishing faster than the ones at the top, which are actually getting bigger. Now you do have the angle change, which this angle is not as steep as this angle, which is not as steep as this angle. So that's bringing everything down, and yet you still see more of the surface area here with distance because this is increased. This is why bottoms of mountains, bottoms of buildings, bottoms of ships all become smaller quicker than the tops. There's no getting around any of this. This can probably also be applied to things like Polaris, right? Your angles are going to behave similar. So anyhow, do with whatever you want with this. Nobody thought it was possible, but it is. It's reverse. It's the reverse foreshortening effect.
The reverse foreshortening effect. I like that. Simple, straightforward, and about as useful as a cow patty at a cocktail party. Gary, you started out with Cletus way over here, 10 feet away from the building. And obviously, he's about 40 feet away from the top of the 5th story of the building. So I'm not even going to talk about that projection. Let's back Cletus up to a point that's about midway between your outer two markers. And clearly, the angular size of the upper 2 stories is increasing more quickly than the angular size of the bottom 2 stories is decreasing. We won't even argue that. Of course, that's what's going to happen. But you seem to suggest at some point that the upper 2 stories are going to become actually larger in angular size than the lower 2 stories are. And that is, frankly, impossible. Cletus is always going to be closer to the bottom 2 floors of the building than he is to the upper 2 floors of the building. Let's back Cletus up just 500 feet. Now we'll bring Cletus in over here on the left side and have him take a look at the building. I know you can't read those angular sizes, so let me blow up that part of the drawing. And you see this. Now from just 500 feet away, the difference between the upper angular size and the lower 2 story angular size is only 0.02 degrees. That is about the diffraction limit for a person with 20/20 vision. Cletus is not going to be able to tell the difference in the size of the upper 2 floors and the size of the lower 2 floors. But let's go out to 5,000 feet, roughly a mile. Look at the upper part of the drawing. We're just going to look at that area in the white circle down there on the right-hand end. Cletus is way over here on the left. Now look at the angular sizes. There's the upper 2 stories angular size and the lower 2 stories angular size. The difference in those angular sizes is less than 2 100,000ths of a degree. But again, the angular size of the lower 2 stories is still a little bit larger than the angular size of the upper 2 stories. Let's go out to 3 miles. This is the point where the bottom of the building might actually begin to disappear. And it's not going to disappear because of angular size. It's going to disappear because of the curvature of the earth. Again, we'll look at just that right-hand end in the white circle, and Cletus again is over here on the left. Now look at the angular sizes. That's the upper 2 floors, that's the lower 2 floors, and the difference in angular size is 6/10,000,000ths of 1 degree. But again, and this is always going to be true, the size of the lower 2 floors is slightly larger than the angular size of the upper 2 floors. Gary, it's not angular size that causes things to disappear from the bottom up. It's the curvature of the earth.
This bears repeating. BlueMarbleScience's debunk thoroughly and utterly destroyed Gary Wybenga's really criterion angular compression claim for why objects disappear from the bottom up. In this particular case, Gary's own demonstration with the board and the rubber bands, the upper angle will always be smaller than the lower angle. So if you're going to claim that angular compression is the reason, then the upper floors must disappear first. Upper floors down. You can't have it be angular compression is the reason bottom up if the angular sizes for the higher elevations are smaller than the lower elevations. And this is something that went right over Gary's head. He couldn't figure out. And after Blue utterly destroyed him, he came out with the Vanishing Zone of Death video, which is nothing but damage control. And it wasn't even very good at that. So as you can see, BlueMarbleScience utterly destroyed Gary Wybenga's Rayleigh criterion angular compression claims for why shit disappears from the bottom up. Now, of course, Gary denies that because, every good con man must die with the lie. So now he's doubling down on his derp, and he just put out another video where he takes some clips from 3 globe earther videos, which he thinks is a coup for him because he's using globe earther videos to somehow prove there's no globe, which he didn't, by the way. We'll get at that in a second. And he came up with this field of view, angular compression, black hole of visualized information, vanishing zone. All right, I'm just going to call it the vanishing zone of death. He came up with this vanishing zone of death criteria that he calls the reason, he claims is the reason shit disappears from the bottom up. Now, he shows you these 3 clips from other videos, and they're very crappy. I don't know what the hell he did, but they're grainy, they're fuzzy. The original ones, and I'll link a couple of them in the description, are very sharp and clear and show a lot more than he did. So he zooms in and shows one where it zooms in and out, and there's some buoys that disappear out of frame, which he claims is the vanishing zone, of optical information, the vanishing zone of death. And he zooms in and out on ships and shows what he shows is compression. So then he makes his claim of the black hole of vanishing zone of death stuff and says, look, these videos demonstrate my claim. Therefore, my claim is correct. Therefore, there's no curvature. QED, the Earth is flat. But wait, Gary, that's not how that works. Just because you say what we see is a demonstration of your claim doesn't mean anything. Because from my standpoint, stuff disappearing over bottom up as it goes over the horizon is due to curvature. Well, now I have just made a claim that is as strong as his is, and he doesn't understand that. And he even doubled down on the derp in his comment section. He and I went back and forth, and they had an interesting exchange on math. Watch this. So in the comment section, under the Vanishing Zone of Death video, Gary asked me a very interesting question. Show me the math that debunks my video and says it can't happen. And that is very interesting. Why is it interesting, you ask? Because last fall, when we were debunking a Gary Wybenga video on the Silly Shill Show, he was in the side chat. He asked to come onto the show to defend himself. He thought it was only fair. So he said, sure, we'll play with the floor for a while, see what happens. He goes through this long explanation about what the Rayleigh criterion is, and the Rayleigh criterion angular compression causes things to disappear from the bottom up crap. And it got to a point where I said, okay, so you're invoking the Rayleigh criteria. You're using some sort of demonstration or using the Rayleigh criterion explanation for why the angular compression is what you say it is. Why doesn't all of that fit the equation for the Rayleigh criterion? And his answer to me was simple. It doesn't have to, because math doesn't represent reality. And here he is asking me to show him math that debunks his video. Hypocritical much? Not to mention, everybody listening to this video knows, even if I did, he wouldn't accept it. He would play the math doesn't represent reality card, and the next thing you know, we're sitting here arguing about math and not, his inane explanations, which is really what he wants, because it's a stall tactic. It's a avoiding the issue logical fallacy, because he tries to redirect, red herring, straw man, however you want to put it. It's one of those. And then that's the whole reason he made this video about the vanishing zone of death, was damage control over being destroyed by BlueMarbleScience. So now, not only does Gary not understand science, but he's a fucking hypocrite. I don't have to show you math. Now show me your math why my claim isn't good. What he doesn't understand, though, is that in order for his claim to have any validity, he needed evidence that his claim is what he says it is. Some piece of evidence that shows the most likely cause for shit disappearing from the bottom up as it goes over the horizon is due to the vanishing zone of death, to the exclusion of all other probabilities. He didn't have that. All he had was, here's the vanishing zone of death. This is how it works. Watch these videos. I have just demonstrated the vanishing zone of death. Therefore, my claim is right. Therefore, there is no curvature. QED, the Earth is flat. No. I am going to show you a demonstration of exactly what he did using a little bit of a different scenario. But it is logically equivalent to what he did. I'm going to make the claim right now that shit falls out of the sky due to telekinetic sea slugs. And the dolphin overlords have directed the telekinetic sea slugs to ensure that all objects fall out of the sky at 9.81 meters per second squared. Now, we all know that the measurement of that acceleration throughout the surface of the Earth is not constant. It's not exactly. Some places it's higher, some places lower. That's because the concentration of telekinetic sea slugs are higher somewhere than they are over here. So now I will demonstrate for you the telekinetic sea slugs are the reason. That fell out of the sky. I have demonstrated that it is definitely due to telekinetic sea slugs under the direction of the dolphin overlords. QED, there is no such thing as gravity. It's telekinetic sea slugs. See, that is functionally precisely what Gary did. I have a vanishing zone of death. Look at these videos. I have now demonstrated my vanishing zone of death. Therefore, I'm right. And no, you're not right. Because that ain't how that works. It just plain doesn't even make any fucking sense, actually. So, in the end, Gary doesn't understand science, doesn't understand math, doesn't understand physics, doesn't understand how to perform a basic demonstration or experiment in order to be able to prove his claims. Yeah. Gary can't science. I'm Mike the Engineer, and I'll talk to you guys next time.